the 10 Commandments. The first one being, before we get to the first one, let me break them into two categories. We know that Moses received two tablets. Each one had etched in them 5 of the commandments. 5 and 5. What were the 2 tablets for? Why not just one list of 10? Because 5 were between us and the divine, between responsibilities between us and the transcendent. The other 5 is our responsibilities and obligations to one to another, person to person. And they inform each other and are critical. But you see there, right there, you have a brilliant, simple system. Do we answer to something beyond ourselves? That's the first 5. And if we do, we'd also answer to each other. And we expect something from each other, and we're accountable also to one another in how we treat each other. So let's begin. The first 5. The first one, most famous one of all, is I am your God that redeemed you and took you out, freed you from a land called Mitzrayim, in English translated as Egypt. The most important principle of all. You are not God, I am not God. We answer to something higher than ourselves. Without that, you have no morality. You have no real decency. The founding fathers understood that very clearly. That's why they said all men are created equal. And by virtue of our Creator, are endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. You have to have something beyond us. Because if I give you the rights, or you give me the rights, or the majority gives it to the minority, it's all subjective and arbitrary. The first thing is, you don't worship yourself, you worship something greater than yourself. Every system that is worth talking about always has that idea. The humility necessary not to be your own God. You're not self-made, you understand and you appreciate and you recognize there's something greater than you. And that greater, which is also, interestingly, the first of the 12 steps, is surrendering to that power. That greater power is the one that helps you free yourself from all your constraints. First commandment. The second one is its twin, the other side, which is do not have false gods. Do not replace this higher reality with money, with power, with control, with the sun, the moon. Idolatry is not only stones and wood. It's anything that is not respecting, not honoring something beyond ourselves. Ultimately, it's really creating something, a God of our own making. And that's why it's so important to know God created you in the divine image, not you create God in your image. How many gods have been created by people, by individuals, that fits my terms? That's not the way it works. You are part of a greater whole. Not the whole is a part of you. So that's commandment number 2. Commandment number 3 is you shall not say the name of God in vain. You could think, what's the significance of that? Significance is words matter. Significance is what is important. If God is to mean anything, it is considered to be something sacred. It's recognizing the sanctity of the divine. It's not something we just talk about like we talk about the groceries or our mundane existence. You don't just use the name God in vain. Unfortunately, I must emphasize that the way God has been taught to us is either completely in an irrelevant and hollow way, or worse, an angry God, a punitive God, a God we don't want to have a relationship. As one of my favorite stories is Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the 18th century great Hasidic master, said to a self-proclaimed atheist, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. So obviously all this requires really sometimes redefining what God is. And when you do, you recognize you don't say it in vain. You don't just use God just as you'd like to use it at your terms. So bottom line is that the first and second commandment translate in the third one that it affects how we speak. It affects how we behave. It affects our daily interactions. It's not just a common thing, which is why, interestingly, some people write God, not G-O-D, they write G''D. It's in a sense respecting that God is not just another word in our lexicon, in our dictionary. That's 3. Number 4, remember and sanctify the Sabbath. What is the Sabbath? That every 7th day of the week, we recognize that the world is not just a mundane physical world. We recognize and remember that during the 6 days of creation, 6 days, the work days, but then comes a day of transcendence, a day of spirit. So you actually live by that. 24 hours, or whatever the amount of time, from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, sundown, meaning after the stars arrive, after nightfall, is a sacred day. You unplug, you disconnect as much as possible from material activities, not because the material world is a bad place, but to put things into context. How many of us have become slaves to our own routines, have become completely dedicated to working and all those and all that it brings with us? It's a day of freedom, of transcendence. That's number 4. And people who do honor the Sabbath, you'll see it changes family life, your personal life, priorities. You dedicate a day to spiritual activities, to prayer, to study, to family interaction, to spirituality. Number 5, which interestingly is, honor your parents, honor your father and your mother. Now you may say, 1 second, you just said earlier that the first 5 are about between us and God. Honoring your parents is not about just honoring a human being. It's honoring the life force, that the divine life force that came to you through your parents, which explains the big question that people ask, what happens if my parents don't deserve honor? It says honor, it doesn't say love. If they deserve, they can love as well. You're honoring life. Those of us that disrespect the life we were given by our parents are really disrespecting the divine life that each of us was blessed with. So number 5 is respecting those that have brought life to you in your life. Not always an easy one, but that's number 5. So that's the first set. Now let's move to the next set, the next 5. The next 5 are all focused between human beings. And just to use an extreme example, if you replace God with yourself, you become God. The Ubermensch of the Nazis, what do you think happens next? You determine what's morality. And that's why it's critical to have the first 5 in place and recognize that higher power, that it's not about you, that then leads to a humane society, an absolute humane society. That's not relative to our whims or to our interests and to our own biases and prejudices. So let's begin. What are the number 6? You shall not commit murder. You shall not murder. Essentially, respect life. You have no right to take another person's life. Doesn't matter why. We're not talking about self-defense now. We're not talking about a situation where you're protecting yourself. We're talking about to murder someone for whatever reason you find. You're angry at them, you want their money, you want their power, whatever it may be. The absolute sanctity of another person's life. Throughout history, you'll see those that did not subject themselves to this law. What did it create? Total chaos, total anarchy. Which leads us to number 7, the protection of people's property. The protection of sexuality. You shall not commit adultery, which means respecting the boundaries of marriage, respecting the boundaries of relationship. Just because you have a sexual desire and you're seduced by something, you do not surrender yourself to it. So think of a society, just those 2, do not murder and do not commit adultery. And adultery means any type of sexual deviation, deviance. What kind of life the world would be? Brings us to number 8. Number 8 is protecting other people's money and property. Do not steal. Do not steal. Do not take what does not belong to you. I think that's self-understood. And why? Because life is not just about you and your needs. It's not dog eats dog, survival of the fittest. There's a life of accountability, as we discussed in the first 5. Number 9, do not bear false witness. In other words, do not lie and do not bear false witness on someone. This is not just an archaic, today as well. People will say things about others, character assassination, slander, and everything that comes with it. So it says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, against your fellow. And finally, number 10, do not covet. It spells out what do not covet the wife of your neighbor, do not covet their property, do not covet their possessions. Do not covet. Be satisfied with what was given to you. Feel blessed. Do not cross the boundary by coveting, because coveting, of course, leads to other things. These are the 10 commandments. If you think about them, very simple. But look how difficult it is to keep. Because what is our biggest enemy? The self, the ego. Me. So as we approach the 3,336th anniversary of Sinai, and you think about this, nothing has changed. Our world, with all our advancements, technology and medical breakthroughs and economy and our prosperity, and so many things that are beautiful about life today, much better than it was in the past. But still, these fundamental foundational principles are the foundations of a civilization. Can we be perfect? But here we have a model. We have a template. We have a formula. And it's a divine formula given to us thousands of years ago. It took many years for people to really begin to value it. Remember, I mentioned before the Constitution of the United States is only 250 years old. We don't have an institutionalized country of freedom only in the last few centuries. What about the over 300 years? The world was ruled by monarchs, by the church, by tyrants, by despots, sometimes benevolent ones and sometimes not. There was no such thing as freedom. There was no such thing as absolute rights. These 10 commandments really had almost no say. It is true Christianity embraced them, so did Islam. But they also broke them when they saw fit. So we go back, recognize there's a power greater than yourself, and you've been placed here in this world on a mission to refine yourself and to refine the world around you. And we have a formula. It's not just an abstract concept. We have a real formula. So as we honor Sinai, it is time to reclaim Sinai for our times. If all of us would abide by these 10 laws, we'd have a very different world. So I encourage you and I encourage myself, let's spread this word. And again, it's not new. Sometimes the most powerful things are not original. They were always here with us. We sometimes forget. And we forget to understand their relevance to us. So the 10 commandments in 10 minutes can really change your life and the life of all of us around us. Thank you for listening. This has been Simon Jacobson, and I wish you all a tremendous life, one that honors thousands of years, timeless and yet timely laws that are given to us to help us become the best we can be. To become the best we can be. Be blessed and be well. Simon Jacobson here from Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Please check out our offerings. Subscribe to them at meaningfullife.com. Subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. And please share, as well as love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments. Again, be blessed and be well. Thank you.